And we're visiting this afternoon with winemaker Damien Grindley of Calcareous Vineyards here in Paso, Robles, California. Damien, thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about the name Calcareous for the winery and about the region of Paso, Robles in general.
Well, welcome to the top of the world here. We really are on top of the world, and if we could turn the camera around, you'd almost get a 360 up here. Now, the calcareous is a geological term that is a collection of soils and rocks. So you've got marble, limestone, chalk in there, and they're all calcium-based rocks. And some of the best regions in the world, whether it be Saint-Emilion in France, or Burgundy, or the Coonawarra in Australia, and a lot of the Italian appellations are all on limestone. And we're blessed here that we've got one of the largest, widest strips of limestone that you can actually grow grapes on in the state of California. There is other limestone in the state of California up in the Sierras, but it's way too cold up there in the winter. Or there's a fair bit up north, which is more marble-like near the Oregon border, but it's too wet over there. That's the giant redwood country. But right here in Paso, we've got this strip that's about a mile wide, and we've got if you drive down the canyon here, we've got 2 miles of it, so because the canyon's a bit wiggly. And we're close enough to the ocean to get a cooling breeze at night, but we're far enough away from it that the grapes truly ripen. So, if you actually put a point in the map, this is precisely where you probably want to grow grapes, and just happen to have these soils that give this real minerally character to some of the whites, and really make the vines have to struggle, so they get a lot of really deep colour and deep intense flavours. And the added advantage, we're on top of the world, so we get to look down on everyone else. It's kind of cool.
What would the average rainfall be around the majority of the calcareous vineyards?
We've had a few drought years of late, so we're actually getting very, very little rain. Now, you probably tell by my accent that I'm used to dealing in millimetres and metres and something. But it's not over, it's very around about the 9-10 inches a year. That's all we see here. But don't forget that we get the fogs, and the fogs come in, and the vines act and the trees act as sort of collecting things, and the fog drips onto the soil. So we get those cooling fogs every day, and that moisture adds to things, but it's not in the official rainfall count as such.
In your summertime temperatures, what is the temperature swing from your highest to lowest each day?
It's big, and then it's on a par with all those classic wine areas like Burgundy, and we'll be down to 50 degrees at night, and often 55, and most days we're in the high 90s in the summer, and that's perfect. That huge change in the day gets the grapes cool down at night, and they settle and have a very long growing season, and time for the flavours to build, not just the sugar.
What year was this winery founded?
Well, we're making wine for a long time. We had leased some old vine vineyards and been making wine for those elsewhere for some time. This property was bought in 2000, and the grapes were planted that year. And the winery itself was actually built 2 years ago. So we're very much excited by the stuff that we're starting to see come through now. But the good thing is we've got a lot of old vine material coming through from previous vintages. Some of the stuff we've got on York Mountain is 45, 50, 60-year-old vines, and you can really see that in the wine that's coming through.
What was the first vintage produced under this label?
Under the Calcareous label, the fruit from this vineyard started sneaking into the blends in 2004, and it's only that with 2006 that you'll actually see something with a state bottle Calcareous Vineyard on it. But the Calcareous name now has been used since about 2001. Oh, there is a 99 as well, sorry, there's a 99 Cabernet that came through.
How many acres is the entire property, and how many are planted?
There's 432 acres here. So far we've planted 24, and quite a mix of Bordeaux and Rhone varietals that, because there's, you can see behind us that there are lots of different slopes and lots of different microclimates, we can find little spots for a lot of the Bordeaux and the Rhone varieties at the same time. But we are planting another 20 acres this fall.
So which varieties are you utilizing, either planted that you own or that you're using in the wines that you produce currently?
The Syrah and Cab on here, and I'd say that's the backbone of what we've got. But you'll find a lot of our wines have, we're master blenders, so we've got a little bit of Mourvedre in there, and that's really inky and black. You'll see a little bit of Cab Franc off the ranch. You'll see a little bit of Malbec, and I think you've seen the Malbec too. And all those little interesting little things that come in to make wine, just that little layers of complexity.
What is your winemaking background and history in this industry?
Well, like any winemaker, you've got to be around the tracks. I started in the UK in wholesale and retail.
What year?
20 years ago now. Thereabouts. So it's been getting on. Before that, I was a landscape in landscape design, but fell into love in the wine industry. Actually, ended up working for one of the large companies, and I developed an allergy to their yeast they used in their beer, because they were a beer seller as well. And so they put me onto the wine side. I loved it, never looked back. Went over to Australia, to a lot going on in there in terms of Barossa, Shiraz and things. Studied winemaking there as a postgrad, and then came over to California. I was in love with the sort of fogs and the cool climate stuff up on the north coast. Sort of found that was getting a little too confined and restricted. People kind of knew what, you plant another Napa Cab, you know exactly what the climate's going to do, exactly where in the valley, add a few barrels, So I went back to Australia, a bit more laid back, a bit more sort of frontier territory, made some classic wines, very highly respected. And I find the same thing in Paso. There's a lot going on. People are prepared to try new things. You plant this block over here with a certain variety, you're not exactly sure what it's going to do. And then you're going to put it with some barrel from cognac that no one's ever heard of, and it comes out to be something quite beautiful. And that's the attraction of Paso for me.
What's the total case production currently of Calcareous Vineyard?
Back in 2007, we crushed to 7,000 cases equivalent. Prior to that, we were around the 4,500. But as this fruit's coming on here, we're growing. We're growing slowly. This year, we'll probably do 8,500, 9,000 cases equivalent. And that's how very slow growth and organic growth, not going out and sourcing, we've got a brand that's taking off, let's go and buy another 100 tons. We're not in that game at all.
Well, you say you've been in the industry or wine associated for the last 20 years, and certainly in different continents. What do you think is the most significant achievement in grape growing, wine production that has improved the quality in your work?
That's a complex question, and people, the quality changes how people perceive quality.
Well, the most common answer I get is identifying the ideal grape variety for the type of soil. That's kind of a given.
Yeah,
I'm looking more in this question for a technique that you use in either a trellising pattern or in a clonal selection or in an irrigation or in a planting side. Is there some technique that you feel like that has come around of popularity in the last 5-10 years that has really advanced the quality of winemaking from your perspective?
I mean, the right clone for the right slope and all that sort of thing, that's just a given. I think my philosophy now is that I've got a toolkit and there is no recipe. And I will, pick the grapes, bite the flavour, and when they come in, and then we'll sit with our feet on the table with me and my assistant winemaker, and we'll have a glass of wine or a glass of beer or what have you. And we'll look at our toolkit and we'll work out what's right for those grapes. There is no recipe, and I think that's the danger that so many winemakers fall into. The great thing is now we have so many more tools, so there's so many more barrel choices, trellising techniques, yeast choices and what have you, and that's what makes it fun. And how many, we won't order a lot of our barrels till November, so we know what fruit we've got, what style of barrel will fit that fruit.
What is your oak of choice, and if you can be more specific, with a particular grape variety?
Because we do a mixture of grape varieties, the easiest thing here to go with 1 or 2 or 3 coopers, have a cooper of choice and bring them in. But again, we don't really do that. We have a few core coopers, which are mostly Rhone Coopers and a couple of Bordeaux Coopers. And we have those as the core brands. But when we look at the grapes coming in and we think, this needs a slightly heavier char, I'll get it on the phone, all the barrels, they'll be here in a month, we'll put that wine in.
So you're primarily French oak?
Primarily. There's a little bit of a touch of American in the Syrah and the Zin, but otherwise everything else is
What state from the United States do you use?
Well, we don't use we use those small forests like Appalachian. There used to be a cooperage in Australia, in California called Mendocino Cooperage, and they used to do some really interesting oaks from forests you've never heard of. And actually they moved to Australia and set up in Australia, the cooper there. And I've talked to him and he put me in touch with some tiny little coopers here that make barrels for 1 or 2 wineries. And we've managed to lever a few extra barrels out of them. And so that's kind of our secret recipe, if you like.
I understand.
We're not going to mention that.
Okay, very good. I asked you this earlier and I got about 30 different answers. I'm going to see if you can narrow it down to one. And the question really is to identify a wine that you had at some point in your life when you realized that there could be something so incredibly delicious that it was utterly life-changing. What was the best wine you've ever tasted?
Well, look, my memory must be getting short. It's only the last wine I remember that was absolutely stunning. Actually, funny enough, the latest favourite wine is a white from Spain, grown on calcareous soils again, and it's one of those unusual grape varieties you never heard of, but it's a food wine. It was absolutely stunning. But there's a series of them, Cloudy Bay, New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc was a stunning thing. There was a Grand Cru Gewürz once that I came across. It just blew my mind for 4 or 5 years. There was
What was the Spanish white variety?
probably Albarano, I would
Right.
think. It didn't specify on the label, but it looked like it. And there was a Liqueur Muscat from Australia. Was another completely blow you away. Back when there was a couple of Napa cabs that were just, that was a culinary experience. I just discovered it. I was raving about it for 4 or 5 years. After you've tasted 40 or 50 of them, it's nothing special anymore, and you move on to something else. But that's the beauty of the wine industry. Even being in the wine industry 20 years, I'm still discovering, even in the last 6 months, something that just blows me away.
What do you think up to this point, Calcareous or otherwise, is the best wine you've ever made? Not what got ratings, reviews, medals. What you personally thought, my God, I've nailed it this time.
Oh, I actually think the best wine that I ever made, that never got put into a blend, was actually a Petite Syrah from the Mendocino. It was, you could almost shovel this out of the glass, it was so inky black. And it ended up being blended away and used to bring a bunch of other wines up. But I just would have loved to have put it in a bottle and actually melted the cap together so that you could lock it away for sort of 100 years and come back to it. So no one ever got to see it but me, really. So tough.
So living or dead, someone influential, someone you admire, rock star, president, parent, mentor in the wine industry, who would you most like to have shared one of the best wines you've ever made with?
Well, I'm an explorer, as you probably know, and I explore a lot of the caves around California. Up in Sequoia National Park, we've just taken the longest cave in California from 18 kilometers long to 30 kilometers long, so that's 20 miles. And what I find when I go on these explorations is my palate gets completely cleansed. There is no smell down there. When I come out of these caves, I'm ready to put a blend together because it's just blank. And being a bit of an explorer, I'd love to be somewhere where there are no smells. So whether it's Scott of the Antarctic at the North Pole and there's no smell down there, or whether it's Hillary at the top of Everest, or is it Neil Armstrong in the moon, there's no smell. And I think you're out there for a day or two, your palate just gets so sensitive. I think that would be the person to sit down. It's not so much the person, it's the situation, it's the place where totally sensory deprivation made you just that much more attuned to the smells and the nuances from the grape.
Well, we're very excited about the wines that you've produced and refined at Calcareous Vineyards, and we know that our listeners will want to pursue those and find them. They're all stunning, wonderful extract, deep, rich, intense flavors, beautiful finesse and elegance. and we really appreciate the time you've taken to spend with us today and your insight to this wonderful label and the many good vintages yet to come.
No worries. Thanks very much.
My pleasure.
Excellent.
All right, what grape variety are we looking at now?
So we're now looking at Malbec. These are actually quite old vines. They're about 8-9 years old, but they look about they're 4 or 5 years old, just because of the soil. They have to struggle so much here. And this will actually be our second crop. We got a small crop last year, and it looks great in barrel. We've really got some great colour and great structure. So we're really quite excited about the fruit coming forward. We've still got to come and drop a little bit of the second crop in here yet. So that's going to go on later this week, which will bring the crop down a bit. But we have quite a heavy vines per acre, so it's quite a dense planting, which keeps the vines under control. As you can see, they're naturally stopped growing, which is exactly what we want. Very much in control, and it's all about the soil. And if you just pan down the soil, this rock, it's almost like a film set. You can pick it up and throw it around. There's nothing to it. It's very, very light. It's almost like pumice, and it's so light. And that's because everything is great. Oh, I don't know. When you go up to Burgundy or Saint-Emilion or Coonawarra, they're all on basically the same type of soil, and we're starting to see those results come through. So we can wander around a little more if you want.
Absolutely. Let's pick another grape variety.
If you're going to film, we'll go up to the top first.
Very good. Following you.
Well,
How far away is that mountain in the distance?
that's Black Mountain. That's quite some distance away. That's about, and it's actually quite a clear day today. There's 2 more ranges beyond it. You can see. I hope that comes out well.
Good, I'm still holding the camera.
Warned you. These grapes are about 23 on the Beaumet, so we're picking about 23.5. But if you taste them, they've got a lot of natural acid. If you were over on the east side or up in Monterey and you'd be getting those Beaumets, you'd be adding acid, and we won't need to. It's just all to do with the soil again. It sounds like a broken record, but it really is.
How old are these vines for Chardonnay?
They're all planted about the same time, so again, they're an 8-year-old vine. We can take a bunch here. Just have a couple of grapes to give it a go, give it a try. But they've got the sweetness, but they just haven't. But they've got great acid with them as well, and you'll see that in all the characteristics. We very rarely have to add any acid here. All natural.
Great.
It's relatively tart at the moment.
How much do you have of this planted?
Not a lot, because everyone advises you not to plant Chardonnay here. So I'm quite impressed that we did. And it's great. It mixes well with our York Mountain Chardonnay as well, which is nice and cool and way out towards the coast and gets the fogs. But this adds an extra dimension to it. Here's a heavy one.
All right, Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yeah, and you can taste that really minty eucalypt leaf type sort of thing at the moment. Now that'll fade, then it'll become quite neutral, and then you'll get the right flavours coming through. And we're close enough to the sea that you get a cooling influence every night, but far enough away that we actually truly get ripe on the cab. And we have actually just bottled our first estate cab. We bottled it on Monday, which is called the Lloyd, strangely enough named after our founder here. But again, a very light crop, small bunches, tiny vines. I mean, they're really struggling. An 8-year-old vine now, out on the east side, we'd be fighting our way down the road between the canes.
How much Cabernet Sauvignon do you have planted?
I don't like to talk in so much acres because of that dense vine spacing. We get we work in pounds per vine, and it's the same way that they plant in Burgundy and what have you. So we may have only 6.5 acres planted, but because of that dense vine planting, that'll give you equivalent maybe of 10 acres at 3 tons to the acre.